Today I'd like to invite you to a review of the Neutra Rivanera, a watch that's been part of my collection for a few months now. And in that time, it's somehow become the one you ask me about the most, which honestly is kind of incredible. Out of all the watches that come and go here, this strange watch from a strange brand with an even stranger name is the one that caught your attention. I don't know if you're more curious about the watch itself or just the reason why I decided to buy it, but either way, it doesn't really matter. Rivanera was released last year and it completely flew under my radar, probably because it came from Neutra, a brand that to me felt like yet another generic microbrand. They always tried to create some sort of visual identity across their collections. And to be fair, they managed to do that, but their overall aesthetic never really spoke to me. And then suddenly they came out with the Rivanera, a watch that frankly doesn't fit their catalog at all, which of course is the best thing about it. As for the downsides, well, there are a few, but for most people, I think the biggest one will be the logo. Honestly, it's the weakest part of the whole design. It's not about the brand itself or the fact that it has no real history or heritage. It's just that name, Neutra, doesn't feel right on a watch dial. And maybe the designer knew it too, because the logo is so small it's almost unreadable, especially for people like me, slightly seasoned by time. So on a daily basis, what I actually see is just a beautifully balanced dial with a discreet little mark I can't even read, which works out perfectly. Another weak point is the price, but I'll get to that later, once we have the full context. Let's start with the watch itself, and I'll say this right away. In my opinion, Rivanera is an exceptionally good design. It's a bold reinterpretation of the classic tank formula, one that gives it a raw, almost brutalist twist. I genuinely believe it could have been the kind of project Cartier was searching for in the early 2000s, when they tried to modernize and sportify their collection. None of those experiments really stood the test of time, and Cartier eventually returned to its roots. But if their tank too had looked like the Rivanera, it could have become a true modern icon. From that perspective, it's almost a shame that this design came from a microbrand, because the only way this piece could ever become a legend is if Neutra somehow grew into a top-tier watchmaker. And looking at their past and current releases, I find that hard to imagine. Maybe that sounds harsh, but looking at the bigger picture, it feels less like the fruit of some brilliant creative vision, and more like a happy accident that just happened to turn out amazing. I'd love to be proven wrong, but that's how it looks to me right now. Still, none of that changes what this watch is. I can't praise this design enough. Every time I wear it, and I wear it often, I'm reminded of just how right everything feels here. I honestly think it's a perfect design. There isn't a single element I'd change. Of course, that doesn't mean it's a perfect watch for everyone. Not at all. It's a niche piece designed for a very specific audience. But within that niche, within the idea of a Tank 2.0, it's a complete coherent creation. Every line, every proportion, every choice feels deliberate and justified. Even the movement. At first, it feels like the least fitting part of the puzzle. But when you consider the trade-offs, the need to keep the case thin and elegant and the price reasonable, the choice starts to make sense. Neutra went with the ETA 7001, a well-known hand-wound caliber that allows for an ultra-thin case profile and offers a beautifully tactile winding experience, something that matters a lot in a manual watch. The finishing is nice too, perfectly appropriate for this price range. Sure, it's a small round movement inside a rectangular case which never looks ideal, but let's be honest, even high-end brands like Patek Philippe don't make bespoke rectangular movements for such proportions. So we can't really expect that from a small independent brand. Bottom line, at this price, it's the best movement they could have chosen. Same goes for the dimensions. I genuinely think they nailed it. It sits somewhere between a medium and large tank and fits just about any wrist. Seriously, I've seen it on people with wrists from 12 to 20 centimeters, and it looked great on all of them. That's the magic of rectangular watches. If you've never tried one, think of it like wearing a smart band. It just behaves differently than a round case. So those numbers, 27 millimeters wide, 34 millimeters long, 40 millimeters lug to lug, don't really mean much in real life, especially with its 5.5 millimeter profile and 20 millimeter strap width. It's also unbelievably light, which in this case works perfectly. The watch is made of grade 5 titanium with a rather unique surface finish that you don't often see. The closest comparison would be the Bulgari Octo Finissimo, but the Rivanera's titanium has a darker, slightly rougher texture. To break up that matte surface, there's a polished line running along the case flank. Visually, it works beautifully, but the execution of that detail, not so much. It's a bit inconsistent, maybe even sloppy. If they had managed to make that polish sharp and precise, it could have elevated the whole design even more. As it is, it looks like something halfway between a deliberate design feature and an unfinished idea, but let's not overstate it. It's a tiny flaw in an otherwise outstanding piece of work. Now, the dial, and that's where the Rivanera becomes truly special. It's an Art Deco composition that contrasts beautifully with the watch's Brutalist case. The polished hands and indices play with light, standing out clearly against the matte dial surface. It gives the whole watch a sense of harmony and depth. There's no lume here, thankfully. Lume would have completely ruined that cohesion. It's one of those designs that make you think, how has no one come up with this before? It feels obvious in concept, a minimalist modern take on the tank, and yet it's completely surprising in execution, almost perfect. Or even perfect, let's say it. I think it's perfect. So we've covered the design, the build, the movement. Let's talk price. Rivanera costs around 1,500 euros. For a micro brand, that's not cheap. But I always say, if you're looking at micro brands purely through the lens of price to quality, you're missing the point. Sure, sometimes that approach works, but the real strength of small independent brands appears when you drop that expectation, when you judge them for creativity, not cost efficiency. And Rivanera is the perfect example of that. It's not cheap. It's not even the best value if you look at finishing or movement. But what this watch gives you instead is something else entirely. It's a piece that could easily fit into a series collection, even one with high-end Cartiers or independent haute horlogerie. And yet, it would still have its place, because it offers a mix of originality, freshness, and timelessness that's genuinely rare. For me, that makes it an extraordinary watch in every sense. Probably the best value for joy I have ever owned, because even though it sits next to watches many times its price, I never feel like I'm making a compromise when I wear it. If joy could be measured in euros, Rivanera would be worth every cent, and then some. Looking at the market, it really has no competition. Sure, there are plenty of rectangular watches inspired by the tank, cheaper ones, pricier ones, but none that feel remotely like this on the wrist. It's a design that refuses to be categorized. It's sporty and elegant at once. Classic yet modern, original yet familiar, and above all, one of a kind. Alright, that's enough praise for one video. My feelings toward this watch haven't changed since day one. If you're wondering why it took me so long to make this review, this is why. I didn't want to do it during that early honeymoon phase, but 8 months later, nothing's changed. Which means it wasn't infatuation, it's appreciation. And just to be clear, I'm not saying it's a perfect watch for everyone. Far from it. If it doesn't speak to you, that's completely fine. But if you've been hesitating, wondering if it's worth it, I hope this helped you decide. And if it's not your kind of design, maybe now you at least understand how I see it. because that's always valuable. We don't have to share the same opinions to understand each other's perspective. That's what makes the watch world so fascinating. Thousands of ways to look at the same thing. What's a flaw for one person might be a virtue for another, and that's okay. As long as the conversation stays open and thoughtful, we all get to see a little further, and that's what it's all about. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.